right, good morning. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Here comes the minion, because we got it exactly. All right, we are going to, we need this book today, if you didn't get it already, Sim Shalom, because it is Chol HaMoed Sukkot, which means the middle of the holiday, and so there are prayers that are simply not in the Beth Abraham Siddur. It's weird because Shacharit, Shacharit, you consider it as Shabbat, prayer-wise, with some additions. Musaf, you consider it as Sukkot, with some Shabbat additions. It's one of those weird Chol HaMoed compromises, of which there are actually many of all kinds, not just liturgical. We also dedicate the service, I'll say this several times, to Cantor Richard Kaplan. May his memory be a blessing. We begin Rise on page 10. ברוך אתה למחלם אשר נתן לסחריבי להלכים בין ובין לילה. ברוך אתה למחלם שעשני בצר מאור. ברוך אתה למחלם שעשני ישראל. ברוך אתה למחלם שעשני בן חורין. ברוך אתה למחלם פוקח עבריים. ברוך אתה למחלם מביש רמים. ברוך אתה למחלם עתיר אסירים. ברוך אתה למחלם זקף כפופים. ברוך אתה למחלם לא קרעת למים. ברוך אתה למחלם שעשה לי כל צרכי. ברוך אתה למחלם, המחמיא צדיק גבר. ברוך אתה למחלם, עוזר ישראל בגבורה. ברוך אתה למחלם, עטר ישראל בתפארה. ברוך אתה למחלם, הנותן לאהב כוח. To page 88, you may be seated. Psalm 150, trying to use a tune that he used, but we don't really use it much anymore, so I barely remember it. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, bekocho, hallelujah, berkia uzo, hallelujah, vikurotav, hallelujah, kerov kulo, hallelujah, beteka shofar, hallelujah, benevel bechinor, Hallelujah, betov umachol, hallelujah, beminim beugav, hallelujah, betiltale shama, hallelujah, betiltale trua, koani shama, hallelujah, hallelujah. Neshama, hallelujah, hallelujah. 334. Nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha. יבלך ומי ישבלך ומי יערוף לך אלא גדול גבוה ונראה כל השמיים בארץ נעלה לך נשפחך תפארך לברך את שם קודשך כאמור לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני וכל קרבי את שם קודשו היאר בתעצמו רוזך הגדול בכבוד שמך גיבור לנצח ונורתך המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו וכתוב לנו צדיקים באדוני ישרים לתהילה בפי ישרים תתהלל ובדברי צדיקים תתברך ובלשון חסידים תתרומם ובקרב קדושים תתקדש ובמקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל פרשתך מלכים בכל דור ודור שכן חובת כל התשובים לפניך אלינו ולאבותינו, להודות להלל לשבח, לבאר לרומם להדר, לברך להלל או קלס, על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי עבדך, משיחך, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים וארץ, כי לך נר אדוני אלוהינו ולאבי אבותינו, שיר ושבחה, הלל וזמרה, עוז וממשלה, נצח גדולה גבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות, מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול ותשבחות, אל ההודאות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך מלכי העולמים. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבם. ואני ברכיותיהם להתמפתי בחייכון ובמחם וכן לכל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבם מבורך, לעולם ועולמי. יתברך וישתבח ויפאר במרום ויתנשא, ותדר ותעלה ותעלה שמי לקודשה בריחו. לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן ועלמה, ויאמרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד. Be seated. ברוך אתה אדוני למחלם, יוצר עברי חושך, עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. הכל יודוך ואותו ישבחוך. We continue on 340, but just because I made the mistake a few weeks ago, I want to check to make sure sound is coming out and everything. So, just 1 second. So yes, everything appears to be working, and I'm at the bottom of page 340. Ein kerkecha ve'ein zulatecha, efes biltecha umi domelach. Ein kerkecha ve'ein zulatecha, efes biltecha umi domelach. Ein kerkecha Elohim olam hazeh, ve'ein zulatecha malkechei olam haba. אפס פרטך גולנו לימוד המשיח, ואין דומה לך משיח לתחיית המתים. אל אדון על כל המעשים ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה גודלו וטובו מלא עולם, דעת ותבונה סובבים אותו. המגאל על חיות הקודש ונדר בכבוד, על המרכבה זכות ומישור לפני חיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו. טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו יצרם, בדעת בבינה ופסקל, כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל, מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה, נעזיבם בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים בהם הרצון קונם. פאר בכבוד נותנים לשלוט, צולה ורינה לזכר מלכותו. קרב השמש ויזרח אור, ראה והקים צורה הלבנה. שבח נותנים לו כל צבא אופנים בחיות הקודש, שבת בכל המעשים. I'm on page 344. יתברך צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו בורא, קדושים ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה וטהרה, בשירה ובזמרה, מברכים ומשבחים, דברים ומריצים ומקדישים וממליכים, את שם האל המלך, הגדול הגיבור והנורא, קדוש הוא. וכולם מקבלים עליהם מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש נוצרם בנחת רוח, בשפה ברורה ונעימה, קדושה כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלך הארץ כבודו. לפעמים בכל הקדוש ברוך הוא מנסים והצרפים, ואתם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומו לברוך לבוא איתנו. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו, מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות, רבה רבה אבטחנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותורה חמת עלינו, אבינו מלכנו ועבור אבותינו, שברכו בך אבינו מלכנו. עבדתי למדם חוקי חיים, כן תכוננו למדנו, אבינו האב הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו. ותן בלבנו להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, והאר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק בנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה, וירא את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו. כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך Hayom alevavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta ba'am, v'shiftecha b'beitecha, uv'lektecha b'derech, uv'shokbecha, uv'kumbecha, uv'shartam leot al yadecha, v'ayuladot dafot b'neinecha, uv'taftam al mezuzot beitecha, uv'isharecha. Continue silently, 340. You can put that anywhere you want. Sit where you want. Rabbi, I will show them the order of Rabbi. תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים אלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת. אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת. לדבר דורו קיים ושמו קיים, בכיסו נכון ומלכותו ואמרתו ליד קיימת, דבריו חיים וקיימים. שאתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו, גואלנו גואל אבותינו, יוצרנו ישועתנו, וננו מצלנו מעולם שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך, עזרת אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם. תהילו בן ברוך ומבורך, משה בן ישראל חנה שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם, 352. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. שירה חדשה, שיפו גאולים, לשמך על שפתיים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ובדכנו מך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. We begin the Amidah out loud and together. There's just so much to do today. It's the Amidah for Shabbat morning on 354. There will be some insertions when we get to the silent part for where it says on Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Ha'anora El Elyon Romel Chasadim Tovim וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם, ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב, להושיע מנדל, מכלכל חיים בחסד. מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסירים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מחמבו כפר גבורות, ומדום אליו מלך Mechemi Umechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua Neman Ata L'chayot Meitim Baruch Ata Adonai Mechaye HaMeitim Nekadesh et Shimcha Ba'olam Kishem Shemakdishim Oto B'Shmei Marom Kakatuv Hayad Nebiyecha V'kara Zel Zeh Ve'amar Kadosh Kadosh Adonai Tzvaot Melech Haaretz Kevodo Az B'Korash Gadol Adir B'Chazak Mashvim Kol Minasim L'Matzerafim L'Matam Baruch Yomeru Baruch Kevod Adonai Mim Komo Mim Komo K'nei Tfiat L'Chalenu Ki Mechakim Anachnu Lach Mataytim Lo B'Tzion B'Karov B'Yameinu Le'olam Va'ed Tishkon Gadal V'Tit Kadash B'Tov Yerushalayim Ircha L'Dor Vador L'Dor Vador U'Le'Netzach Netzachim Ve'einenu Tirena Malchutecha Kadavar Hamur B'Shirei Uzecha Yedei David Mashiach Tzidkecha Yimloch Adonai Le'olam Elohai Tzion L'Dor Vador Hallelujah L'Dor Vador Nagid Godlecha U'Le'netzach Netzachim Kedushacha Nagdish Aleinu Pinu L'Mitzelam Ba'ed K'mlakar B'Kadosh Ata Baruch Ata Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Continue silently 358 to 365, adding where it says on Chol Moed. Keinu Avinu Kulanu Ke'echad Kulanu Ke'echad Be'or Panecha Baruchenu Avinu Kulanu Ke'echad Kulanu Be'or Panecha Baruchenu Avinu Kulanu Ke'echad Be'or Panecha Adonai, Baruch Shemo Yisrael, Shalom. Right, so we're going to remain standing as we turn to the Hallel, page 380. 380. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher kitshanu mitzotav v'tzivanu likro et ha'Hallel. Hallelujah. Hallelu adei Adonai. Hallelu et shem Adonai. Yehi shem Adonai mevorach. מעתה ועד עולם, ממזרח שמש עד מבוא, מעולה שם אדוני, רום הגויים אדוני, על השמיים כבודו. מכאדוני אלוהינו, המגביהי לשבת, המשפילי לראות בשמיים ובארץ, מקימים מעפרדה, מאשפות ירים אביון, להושיבים נדיבים, עם נדיבי עמו. מושיבי עקרת הבית, עם הבנים שמחה. הללויה, 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 הללויה. בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז, הייתה יהודה לקודשו, ישראל ממשלותיו. הים רעם ינוס, הירדן ייסוב לאחור, הערים רקדו כאלים, גבעות כבני צאן, בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז. מלך הים כי תנוס, הירדן תיסוב לאחור, ההרים תרקדו כאלים, גבעות כבני צאן, מלפני אדון כולי ארץ, מלפני אלוהי יעקב, אהבך חצור, הגמיים, חלם איש, למיינו מים, לא לנו אדוני, לא לנו. ישראל בתק אדוני עזרם ומגינם הוא, בית אהרון בכתוב אדוני עזרם ומגינם הוא, ירא אדוני בכתוב אדוני עזרם ומגינם הוא. אדוני זכרנו יברך, יברך את בית ישראל, יברך את בית אהרון, יברך ירא אדוני. הקטנים עם הגדולים, יוסף אדוני עליכם, עליכם ועל בניכם, ברוכים אתם לאדוני, עושה שמיים בארץ, השמיים לאדוני, והארץ נתן לבני אדם, לא המתים יהללויה. לא כל יורדי דומה, ואנחנו נברכך, מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם, הללויה. חפתי כי ישמע אדוני את קולי. אהלך לפני אדוני בארצות החיים האמנתי כי אדבר אני, עניתי ועוד, אני אמרתי בחופשי כל אדם כוזב. ידברת אדוני שלם נגנה לכל עמו בחצרות בית אדוני בתוככי ירושלים. הללויה. הללו את אדוני כל גויים, כל גויים שבחו, שבחו כל העמים, כי גבר עלינו, עלינו חסדו באמת אדוני לעולם. הללויה. הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו. יאמר נא ישראל, כי לעולם חסדו. יאמרו נא בית אהרון כי לעולם חסדו יאמרו נא ירא אדוני כי לעולם חסדו מן המצר קראתיה ענני במרחביה מן המצר קראתיה ענני במרחביה אני לא הירום Bihuli Share Tzedek Avovam Oreha Bihuli Share Tzedek Avovam Oreha Zeh Hashar L'Adonai Tzadikim Yavovo Zeh Ashar L'Adonai Tzadikim Yavovo Odeha Ki Anitan Li Batahi Lishua Odeha Ki Anitan Li Batahi Lishua Even Masu Abonim Hayeta Rosh Bina Even Masu Abonim Hayeta Rosh Bina Me'et Adonai Hayta Zot Hini Vlad Me'enenu Me'et Adonai Hayta Zot Hini Vlad Me'enenu Zeh Hayom Asa Adonai Nagira V'nizmechavo Zeh Hayom Asa Adonai Nagira V'nizmechavo Adonai Hoshiana Adonai Hoshiana Adonai Hatzlichana Adonai Hatzlichana Baruch haba b'shem Adonai Brachim b'beit Adonai Baruch haba b'shem Adonai Brachim b'beit Adonai El Adonai v'irlanu Yisru chag b'avotim ad karnon ha'mizbech El Adonai v'irlanu Yisru chag b'avotim ad karnon ha'mizbech Eli ata be'otecha Elohai aromi mecha Eli ata be'otecha Elohai aromi mecha Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasdo. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasdo. Ya'alech Adonai Eloheinu kol matzah. Ki lecha tov, le'odot b'shimcha le'el, lezamer k'milam ad olam ata el. Baruch atah Adonai, melech olam v'tishbacho. I'll go to the Kaddish Shalem in just a moment. I don't know if you caught it, but one thing I did was I did that part. Ani Amarti B'chotzi Chok Hadam Kozev. He used to really dramatically say it instead of sing it, Richard Kaplan. And I asked him why. He never gave me the answer, or maybe I just never. The answer was so deep I didn't understand his answer. But I think, honestly, that it had to do with the fact that that line means all mortals are undependent, right? That's what it literally says. And Kenner Kaplan was really all about Hashem, and mortals just don't have the same anything. The one part I kid a little bit, but I did not do one mistake that he made in the Hallel, which was instead of saying Shabchuchu, he said Shababchuchu, and that's because his music, he followed the music to Hallel rather than the Siddur, and it was written wrong in the music notes. I peeked one day, and that's why it was Shababchuchu. And there are people who still tell me, I don't think you don't have it right. No, I promise it's not Shababchuchu. There's no such line. But it was still an endearing part and something that when I go through Hallel, But I hear Kenner Kaplan doing that. Even his mistakes had their own beauty. And they were never musical mistakes. Never, ever, as I'll talk about shortly. Kaddish Shalem, page 392. Garavi Krashem Erava, Gamadi Brachir Teva Mlich Machute Bachaychon, Vimachon Cherchol Beit Yisrael, Bagalav Isman Karibi Meru, Yehesh Meirava Mevora, Meolam Mehamaya Yifara. Yibarach Vishtabach Yibarach Hermal Mina Sevi, Tadavi Televi, Telash Meda Kudisha, Elami Kovachata Vishira Touch, Katfanechamata Damiram Yamavi Meru, Tikvat Soton, Voton Choshrep, Ramavandi Vishmai Vimeru, Ishlam Rabin Shemai, Vachimel Repo Israel Vimeru, Ose Shalom Vibromav, Uyase Shalom, Lenu Vel Ko Israel, Vel Ko Yoshvei Tevel, Vimeru. And we can sit down, and we're going to turn to page 794. We're going to do the responsive reading based on the biblical book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. It's speaking about the mortals not being dependable, right? Cosette, this is really what this book in many ways is about. It's about a lot of things, but it's humanity trying to come to a relationship with itself. Or in tradition, King Shlomo, in his elder years, having lived this incredible life filled with wealth, women, wine, horses, buildings, so many different things, and yet realizing that even with all that, money can't buy you love, or whatever it may be. Everything is to a certain extent, vanity, futility, breath, wind. There's a lot of definitions for it, so that's what we're going to read, and there you'll catch the lines at the end, which we associate with the Birds, the hit song in the 60s, maybe with the Forrest Gump movie, lots of other soundtracks as well, actually written by Pete Seeger, but recorded and made into a hit by the Birds. But all based on this book. And Frederica or anybody else, I like to say that remember the name of this book, Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. If you can remember the name of the book, when I ask you in Hebrew school, you get richly rewarded. But it's very rare, so that's why I can do such a thing. All right. Futility, utter futility, said Kohelet. What do we gain by all of our toil under the sun?
Generations come and go, but the earth remains the same forever. All streams flow to the sea, but the sea is never full.
What has happened before shall happen again. There's nothing new under the sun.
As wisdom grows, vexation grows. Merriment is futile, for everything is mad.
Acquiring wealth and possessions is futile. There is no real value under the sun.
The wise and foolish share the same fate. Both are corrupt and strive after ruin.
For everything there is a season, a time for everything under the sun.
A time to be born and a time to die. A time to laugh and a time to cry.
A time to lose and a time to seek. A time to be silent and a time to speak.
A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace.
God brings about everything in its time. Nothing is added or taken away.
Justice and wickedness are both in the world. Humans and animals share the same fate.
Enjoy your possessions, for that is your portion. Who can foresee what will come?
For the oppressed and oppressors lack comfort. They would better not have one.
Still, two are much better off than one. Should they fall, one can raise the other.
Be not rash out your mouth. Be not hasty to utter a word before God.
For God is in heaven and you are on earth. Therefore let your words be few.
When you make a vow to God, do not delay. God has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill whatever you vow.
One who loves money will never be satisfied. A lover of wealth will never have his fill. This too is futility.
As one came out of his mother's womb, so must he depart. Naked as he came, with nothing for his soil.
A good name is better than fragrant oil, and the day of death better than the day of birth.
It is better to go to a house of mourning than a feasting, for that is the end of every mortal.
Sometimes the righteous perish in spite of their righteousness, and sometimes the wicked endure in spite of their wickedness.
There is not one righteous person on earth who does only good and never sins.
Sometimes the righteous are repaid like scoundrels, and And sometimes scoundrels are repaid like the righteous.
This too is frustration. I therefore am enjoyment. Live by them good under the sun, but eating, drinking, and enjoyment.
The same fate is in store for everyone, pure and impure, righteous and wicked, the good and the sinners.
Eat your bread by gladness and drink your wine with joy, for God has already approved of your action.
Enjoy life with the woman you love all the fleeting days of your life that has been granted to you under the sun.
Do with all your might whatever you are able to do. There is no activity, no fraud, no wisdom where you are going.
The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Bread is not won by the wise, nor wealth by the intelligent.
Time and chance you all along.
Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it.
How sweet is the light, how pleasant for eyes to behold the sun.
Rejoice while you are young, follow your heart's desire, the sight of your eyes.
Rebel with all these nations, God will call you to account.
Remember your Creator and appreciate life, the days of your youth, before the days of sorrow come, and years draw near when you will say, I have no pleasure in them.
There is no end to making ridiculous, and much study is the weirdness of the flesh.
To sum up the matter, revere God and fulfill the mitzvot.
This applies to all worlds. God will call every creature to account for everything good or bad.
To sum up the matter, revere God, fulfill mitzvot, for this applies to all mortals. All right, we're going to turn back now to the Torah Service, which is on page maybe 394.
394 is right.
All right, 394. Okay, so let's have Harlan and Obi come up to carry the Sifrei Torah. And we need some ark openers as well. Why don't we have let's have Hilda and Karen, if you wouldn't mind opening the ark. All right. Ein kamocha va'elohim Adonai, ein kema'asecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai niglo, ve'olam va'ed, Adonai oz le'amro yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Avarachami eitiva berzoncha et Zion. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Levad batavnu, melech el ram v'nisa, Adon olamim. Vayibinso Aaron vayomer Moshe, Kula Adonai ve'yakutzu oilecha, ve'yanuzu misanecha mipanecha, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, U'devar Adonai miYerushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah. Ve'amo Yisrael b'kedushato v'trama, ve'anarachet, ve'lishnei kadisha, kadisha yakira, Anna emar juj bechan, Yehi rava progama, Tetiv tahli li be'oraita, V'tashim mishalim delivi. Olam Yisrael, v'tavu l'chaim v'lishlam. Amen. That's the second Torah, yeah? Nope. That, yep. 10 Commandments, Exodus. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadol Adonai Iti, V'nerama Shemo Yachdav, Lecha Adonai HaGedula, V'HaGevura, V'HaTiferet, V'HaNetzach, V'HaHod. Ki kol v'shamayim u'ba'aretz, Ki kol v'shamayim u'ba'aretz, Lecha Adonai ha'mamlacha, Ve'amid naseh lechol erosh. Romamu, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavu, Le'adam raglav kadoshu. Romamu, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavu, Le'adam Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. And we may be seated. In our Chumash, we turn to page 538. 538. Exodus 33:12. The Chol Moed Pesach reading actually does not have much to do with the Chag, although we get it at the very end, in the 7th Aliyah. And this is the part where God and Moses are conversing after the incident of the golden calf. And basically, Moses begs God to see the divine glory. You have the new set of commandments commanded to Moses to carve out. And then God comes down in a cloud with the part that we actually don't do in the Torah Service because of Shabbat. Adonai, Adonai, Elrachum, all the 13 beautiful attributes, mostly of compassion for God. So that's what we have today. 33:12 through 16. Who's the first Torah reader? All right. So I know you're also reading Torah, but Larry, you're going to Kohen today as well. So first Aliyah.
Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam v'atah b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Shkoch. Second Aliyah, verses 17 through 19. Please let me see your glory, your kvodecha. Moses pleads. Alan on the 1 year north site of his beautiful wife Helen.
Yamad, Yitzchak, Moshe Ber, Shmuel, Shana Figel, Shady.
Vayomer Harnina et Kevodecha Vayomer Ani Ha'avir Kol Tuvi Alpanecha Vekarati Vashem Adonai V'chanecha V'chanoti et Asher Ha'od V'rikanti et Asher Arachem.
Amen. Yeshua. The third Aliyah, verses 20 through 23 in Exodus chapter 33. You cannot see my face, God tells Moses, but you can see my back.
Yamad, Shirat the Torah, V'adnachah V'shlima, Shlishi.
Amen. Yeshua. We're on chapter 34 now in Exodus. Salacha, a new set of commandments need to be carved out. Meet me at the top of the mountain.
Asher Shamri.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Lo'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'karbono b'chol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notei HaTorah.
Amen. Adonai al Moshe v'zolcha shne luchot avanim rishonim v'chatabti haluchot et הדברים אשר היו על הלוחות הראשונים אשר שיפרת וינחת בבוקר ויעלית בבוקר על הר סיני וניצבת לי שם ראש ההר ואיש לא יעלה עמך וגם איש אל ירא בכל ההר גם הצאן והבקר אל יראו אל מול ההר ההוא.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan v'tachenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Notei HaTorah.
Amen. Yeshua. We are now on the fifth aliyah. This is the attributes. Hashem, Hashem. El Rachum V'Chanun. Ruth Klein will be reading the Torah, and Uli, the aliyah.
Yamov, Ayman Abraham Sarah, Amishi.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach.
Amen.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'karbono b'chol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notei HaTorah.
Amen.
ישכם משה בבוקר ויעל הר סיני כאשר ציווה אדוני אותו ויקח ידו שני לוחות אבנים וישב אדוני בענן ויתייצב עמו שם ויקרא בשם אדוני ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא אדוני אל רחום חנון ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת נוצר חסד אלפים נושא עוון והפשע וחטא ונקנו ונקה כעפור נעבור בנים ובני בנים על שלישים ואחיהם וימהר משה ויפול ארצה וישתחו ויאמר הנה מצאתי הן בעיניך אדוני ילך אדוני בנו כי עמך אוהבו וסלחת ועווננו חטאתנו חטאנו ויאמר ננו נגד כל החסד נפלאות שלא נמחו בכל הארץ ובכל הגויים וראה כל העם ותראו את מעשה אדוני כי נהגו אשר אני עושה עמם
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נתן בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Yeshua. Chapters 34, 11 through 17 is where we are now. So that's on page 542. And this aliyah has the idea that the covenant involves getting land and tearing down idols. We invite J. Phyllis Koppelman to come to recite the aliyah. They're on their real East Bay Jewish community fixtures, all kinds of boards and chairs. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Yaakov ben Abraham lev Keseh bat Belvo Shishit
Baruch Adonai HaBarach.
Baruch
Adonai HaBarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
שמור לך את אשר אחים צבך היום, הנני אגרש מפניך את האמורי והכנעני והחיתי והפריזי והחיבי והיבוסי, שמר לך ותכרות ברית ליושבי הארץ אשר אתה בא עליה, ונהיה מבקש בקרבך. כי את מזבחותם תתוצון, ואת מצבותם תשמרון, ואת אשר הבטיחותו. כי לא תשתחוון אל אחר. כי אדוני קנה שמו קנה הוא, הדיחו ברית ליושב הארץ וזנו אחרי אלוהיהם. וזבחו את אלוהיהם, וקרא לך ואכלת מזבחו, ולקחת מבנותם לבניך, וזנו בנותיו אחרי אלוהיהם, וחיזנו את בניך אחרי אלוהיהם. אלה מעשיך, אלוהיהם מעשיך, לא תעשה לה.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet ve'olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yeshua. Seventh aliyah, verses 18 through 26, the observance of the three pilgrimage festivals, including Sukkot. And so therefore we now have, that's why this is this particular passage. And of course it ends though with not eating cheeseburgers, but other than that it's about the holidays. Not actually, but the line about boiling kidneys, brothers. And we call upon Alicia Cernitz and Camelia Schwartz for the seventh aliyah, and it's the yortzeit of Alicia's beloved father, Sai, who her son and Lily's brother, his name back.
Samdu, Anabah Shabbat, Shlomo, Utavora, Kunalaya, Bakanabasha, Shvi'i,
Baruch Adonai Olam Moed.
Amen. את הרצון תשמעו, שבעת ימים תוך המצון, אשר ציוויתיך למועד קודש אבי, כי בקודש אבי יצאת ממצרים, כל כתרחם לי, בכל מפנך עשיתי זכר, פתר שוב בסתר, ופתר עמוק תפדה בסתר, אם לא תפדה בארתו, כל בחור, בניך תפדה ולא יראו פני ריקם, ששת ימים תעבוד וביום השביעי תשקול, בחריש ובקציר תשקול, וחג שבועות תעשה לך, ביקורי קציר איתי, בחג העשיר תקופה השנה, 3 פעמים בשנה, יראה כל זכור לך את פני אדון, אדוני אלוהי ישראל, כי אוריש גויים לבניך, והרחבתי את גבולך, ולא יחמוד איש את ארצך ועלותך, לראות את פני אדוני אלוהיך, 3 פעמים בשנה, לא תשכח על חמץ, לא תשכח על חמץ, דם זכרי ולא ילין הבוקר, זה אחר הפסח, ראשית קורא עד מותך, תביא בית אדוני אלוהיך, לא תבשל ידי וחלל עמו.
Amen. Yasher Koach. Please rise. The Hatzi Kaddish is recited.
Yikadal, Yikadash Merabah, Amen.
standing for the Hagba and Galila, we call upon Marty Stone and Jan Littman Weiss.
Yama, Vietama,
This is a very, very large one. We may be seated. We turn to page 935, the additional reading from Pinchas, the book of Numbers, Numbers 29, 23 through 28, the fourth and fifth days of Sukkot, those particular offerings to be brought on those particular days. And we are on the fifth day of Sukkot, but you got to have one extra on for the Torah readings. I'm not quite sure why, because they do have 3 verses, which is the minimum, but nevertheless, that's what has been decided by tradition. And we call upon David Goodwin for the Maftir.
Yama, David and Tananya Hatboy, Namafir.
Sarif Karach Elvelea, Yivarech, Roth Rimasher Lugil, Nicola Hakol, Nicola Torah, Vilikot HaShabbat, Hakash Baruch Hu Yivarech Tam Mishpachot Tam, Vashak Habat Skaba Chomasedem, Nikos Shechem Linomar. Amen. We're thinking especially today of those who are ill: Scott Lawrence, Dolly Van Razel, Barbara Rose, Lou Burl, Ilya Volk, Karina Gola Bat Hadavi Huda Tzvi, Leihudi Bat Shena, Shabtai Dopen Shimon Moshe, Manuel Mansara, Ray Ranshaw, Missy Rosen, Albert Alter, Rosie Gurman, Leah Shimon Lazar, Bob Rasters, Justin Hardy, Yechiel Ben Elisa, Eva Abrams Heimowitz, Martin Rosenthal, Shulamit Batlea, Miriam Batludit, Adele Mendelson, David Snyder, Marina Gotcha, Carmel Oria, Bat Ariel Sarah, Leah Bat Fredela, Zalman. Do you have any other names of those who are ill? Please just go ahead and say them out loud this time. Yishabera, Avotenu, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Uyivarech, Virapeh, et Aholim, Elna Refana, Lahem, Elna Refana, Yisheva, Avotenu, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Uyivarech, Virapeh, et Aholim. And we rise once again for the second Haggadah and Galila. We call upon Steve Steiner and Francis Herb. V'hayita sameach, v'samachta b'chagecha, v'hayita sameach. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. V'samachta b'chagecha, v'hayita sameach. V'samachta b'chagecha, v'hayita sameach. Haftarah is found on page 1260, 1260. He describes between Gog and Magog. And after that time, though, the perfect world, or the world to come, will be ushered in. And it kind of begins after that battle with a huge pilgrimage from everyone in the world to Jerusalem, celebrating Sukkot. And that is why it is read on Fallen Away at Sukkot. Page 1260.
Ben Adam Ve'al Hagod Ve'amarta Elomar Adonai Elohim Hinei Elecha Gog Nasi Rosh Neshek Betuval V'shavavticha V'shosheticha V'haleticha V'yarkatei Tzafon V'havioticha Ahari Yisrael V'heketi V'kashti Miyad Smolecha V'chetzeticha Miyad Yamincha Apil Ahari Yisrael Tipol V'yata Kol Abecha Akabecha Yamim Asher Itach V'et Tzipor Kol Kanaf V'chayat Hasadeh Techiecha La'achba V'al Panei Hasadeh Tipor Ki Ani Dibarti Na'um Adonai Elohim V'shalachti Esh B'matrod Uv'yovshei Hayim B'vetach V'yadu Ki Ani Adonai V'et Sham Kodshi Odiach B'toch Ami Yisrael V'kol Achil Et Shem Kodshi Od V'yadu HaGoyim Ki Ani Adonai Kadosh V'Yisrael Hinei V'esh Nechita Ne'u Adonai Elohim Hu Hayom Asher Dibarti V'yatzu Yoshvei Arei Yisrael V'avru V'hashiku V'neshek Magan V'tzina V'keshet V'chitzid V'makehel Yad V'aroma V'aru Lahem Sheva Shanim V'lam Yisu Etzim Min Hasadeh V'lo Yachtavu Min Ya'arim Ki V'neshek Yavaru Esh V'sholelu Et Sholeleihem V'vozazu Et Vozazeihem Na'u Adonai Elohim V'chayav V'yom Hahu V'yatem Magov V'makom Shalom Kever V'Yisrael Geha Ovrim Kidmat Hayam Chosemet Hi Et HaOvrim V'kavru Sham Et Gog V'et Kol Hamonah V'karu Gei Hamon Gog V'kavru Beit Yisrael V'ma'an Taher Et Haaretz Shiva Chadashim V'kavru Et Am Haaretz V'haya Lahem Lashem Yom Yikavti Na'um Adonai Elohim Anshe Tamid Yavdilu Ovrim Ba'aretz Mekaprim Et HaOvrim Et HaNotrim Et Pnei HaAretz B'Tahara Miksei Shiva Chodeshim Yachkaru Yavru HaOvrim Ba'aretz V'ra'a Et Semadam V'na Et Slom Zion Ad Kavruoto Hamakborei Vim Elgei Hamon Gog Gog Shem Gad Shem Ir Hamonah V'taharu Ha'aretz Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Sur kol ha'olamim צדיק וכל הדורות, האל הנאמן אומר ויוסף, המדבר מקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, נאמנים דבריך ודבר אחד מדבריך, אחור לא ישוב ריקם, כי אל מלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הנאמן כל דבריו. לכם, על ציון כי היא בית חיינו, על לבד נפש תושיע במחירה וימינו. ברוך אתה אדוני, משמח ציון לבניך. צמחנו אדוני אלוהינו, בליעך הנביא עבדיך, ומלכות בית דוד משיחך, במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו, על כיסא לא ישב זר, ולא יחוד אחרים את כבודו, כי בשם קודשך ונשבעת לו, שלא יכבד נרות לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו, וקדושה לבנך וכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Yashua. Thank you, David. We're going to recite responsibly the prayer for peace on page 417, along with the keeping in mind Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha, spread over us, the shelter of your peace. 417, may we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world. For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion. I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lie down and no one shall terrify you.
I will make the land in which it ceases, and it shall not be ravaged by war.
Let love and justice flow like a mighty stream.
Let peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea.
And let us say,
Amen.
Amen. All right, we will continue now with Ashrei 420. Let's see. Yeah, so I know you're old, Tamar, but they're going to need your help too. So Tamar and Ruth and Frederica. So we've got 6. Sorry. Oh, Camille's here too. Okay. Yes, over there. So we've got a hodgepodge of ages. We could just go Camellia and Ruth actually. Now she.
Asher.
Yeah, Asher, another high school. So let's have. Yeah, sorry, we're going 6th through 11th today. Come on up, all 5, 6 of you, however many of you that actually know it. Yeah, but I know we could almost have done the 2 8th graders, but not quite. And Ruthie, you're going to stay up here for Mizmor when you're done with that.
Ashrei Ashrei Beitecha, Odihalu Hasela.
Ashrei Hashekachalo.
Ashrei Hashanai Elohim. Tehila LeDavid, Arim Chai HaMelech, Hashim Halelam Va'ed. Bechol Yamav Archecha, Hashim Halelam Va'ed. Keratol Adonai Ru'ameno, Eliku Atayim Leker. Orloi Shabbat Ma'asecha,
Uratecha Yagidu.
Hadarke V'Hadecha, V'Dibrini Kutecha Asika, V'Zuzmatecha Yomeru, U'Lata Asapena, Zechiratu Kayabiu, V'Tzikatecha Yerninu,
Adibarakum Adonai, Erchapayin U'Do Chased.
Torah Service.
We rise for the return of the Sept towards the Ark. Same folks, Ark openers. Yalu et Shem Adonai, Kiniskav Shemo Levado, Odo Aleret, Veshamayim, Vayarem, Erem Be'amo, Te'ila Levo, Asiya, Livnei Yisrael, Amru, Alleluia, Alleluia. Amuladonai B'nei Amuladonai Amulos Amuladonai Kevod Shema Nishtach Amuladonai Me'adrat Kodesh
Kol Adonai al Hamayim El HaKavakirim Adonai al Mayim Rabim
Kol Adonai Kol Adonai Behadar, Kol Adonai Shomer Harazim, Vaishaber Adonai Behar Zehal Vadon.
Vayakidim Kamel Agel, Lebanon Messiryam, Kamel Vimeni.
Kol Adonai Oten Alohesh, Kol Adonai Yahil Midbar, Yahil Adonai Midbar Kadesh, Kol Adonai Yehol El Hayalot.
Vayachasam Yarad, Uhahalal Kulal Merkava.
Adonai Lama You may be seated. Hanishamalach. Which is exactly what happened. Right? He would wave his arms frantically. Hanishamalach. V'haguf po'alach. The soul is yours, and the body is your handiwork. This is from Slichot, the prayers, the Slichot prayers, that the ones that begin on the Saturday night before Rosh Hashanah. It was one of his favorite pieces. Now, of course, Richard had a body that was actually, you may not know this, he was a black belt in martial arts, so he actually had a very finely tuned body, but he was also all soul, right? He was just pure soul. And anyone who met him, that's what you thought. So the soul is yours, except that the soul was really God's. The soul, Richard's soul, kind of belonged to God. It does now that he's laying in the earth, but it kind of always did, right? He always had one foot in this world and maybe 2 feet in the next world. That's sort of how he was. I feel lucky to have worked with him for 17 years. He clearly lived on a very different spiritual plane than most of us. He was born in Los Angeles. He went to Fairfax High School, which was the same high school that my father went to, actually. They were not there at the same time, although one of his classmates is in this congregation, actually. Joe Millman was actually a classmate of Cantor Kaplan's in high school. His father was a Hazan of sorts. His whole family were musicians. And whenever you would compliment Richard on his musicianship, something he was actually incredibly humble about, and I'll explain that a little more later, but one of his responses was always, "You should have seen Jeffrey." Jeffrey was his brother, and his brother was a rock musician. He toured and did studio with groups like Last Night in the Pips and Jethro Tull, others. It's hard to Google now because you used to be able to do it a lot easier, but now there's too many other Jeffrey Kaplans with fame, and it's hard to find. And he unfortunately died of a drug overdose in the late 60s or early 70s. I can't remember which. But so there's not a lot of information about him, and oftentimes the musicians weren't credited, but he is on many of them. And Richard said he was really the musician, which is saying something, because Richard's musicianship was, just phenomenal. He got a BA in ethnomusicology from UCLA and an MA in musicology from UC Berkeley. He performed as a professional musician in bars and hotels, first in Manhattan and then in the Bay Area. And in fact, it's in the Bay Area, and I kind of knew this, but I learned more of it at his actual funeral yesterday. Yesterday, when Michael Ziegler, who was one of his best friends, actually, he kind of discovered him in a bar in Berkeley, and he said, "Shouldn't you be singing this music for Hashem?" And really, that was from that moment on, Richard started a serious process of learning Jewish music and Judaism. Although he knew it, his father was a sort of Hazan, but he learned a lot. He took that very seriously, as he took most things very seriously. He studied with Cantor Mark Dinkin, who was the Cantor Emeritus at B'nai Shalom in Walnut Creek. He also taught as a professor of music at Skyline College and a few other places. He was ordained as a cantor in a private ordination ceremony. He didn't go to JTS, but he was ordained by Zalman Schachter, who was really the founder of Renewal Judaism. And from what I gather, both Richard's respect of him and what I heard yesterday, and actually I've seen it on a couple of videos, Zalman just loved Richard Kaplan. Richard was his favorite in terms of just bringing the music to life, and he just was very, very attached to. They were attached to one another. He had 3 albums, 3 main albums anyway, and each tell us the story of who Cantor Richard Kaplan was. The first is called Turning the Soul. And I already mentioned how his different spiritual plane and how he was kind of pure soul, all about spirituality. And he brought this far beyond Temple Beth Abraham, of course. At Temple Beth Abraham, he was freest when he did his own personal Raza de Shabbat service, the mystery of Shabbat, where he could sing and talk throughout the service and give his teachings. But he was a scholar in residence at many congregations. Hadn't done that so much in the last 10 years, but early on, he worked here 3 out of every 4 weekends. Early on, that's because he was traveling a lot. He would go to different congregations throughout the United States, and he was their guest scholar, their guest cantor. He also had his Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs Minyan, which met primarily at the JCC at Berkeley, but in other places as well. A lot of people knew him from that. He had a big following, and there he did also. It was free-flowing. And he really had his own Hasidim, and he was really more like a Rebbe there than a Chazan. But I would say even in the renewal movement, right, where it's kind of a Rebbe-ish, guru-ish kind of movement. Not pejoratively meant, but at least musically, he was the guru, he was the Rebbe of music in that community. The respect and love and honor and just admiration that all these people felt for him is quite amazing. And that also says something about his musicianship too, because like every ordained person in the renewal movement, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it seems like can sing amazingly. So you'll go to anything they do, and there's multi-part harmony, and musicians will pick up instruments and they'll play them in the proper key. But he was, if you're talking about Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, he was the musician of the musicians. His music in Kavanah transported us sometimes to a heavenly space, but especially him, right? He was in the zone, right? In the spiritual sphere when he was singing. And we all have our favorites of the pieces that he did. One of them, which I'm going to sing later two of them I'm going to sing later. One is Alleluia, 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 Abde Adonai, and we're all going to sing that together. Another is his holiday piece that comes in the Amidah, but the one that I think stands out probably to most of us was Unitanet Tokef. I don't think we'll ever hear an Unitanet Tokef the way he did Unitanet Tokef. The underrated part to me of his Unitanet Tokef was when he made his voice sound like the shofar. Yitzaka, but I mean, really sounded like, and there's some technical name for where your voice sounds like the instrument, which he explained, I don't remember, but it was incredible when he did that. But the one that you're all going to remember is Emet, right? When he would shout, Emet, 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 Emet! And he was shouting it, and you were out here. I was like right next to him. I could really feel that truth, that Emet, up there by the Ark of the Unitanet Tokef. It was really something. It's just, and it's because that prayer meant so much to him. The humility of human beings versus God. That's what it was all about. Like Kol Nidre, he did that very beautifully, but he wasn't that into it because it's denouncing vows that you're going to make. This was emet. This was the truth. This was who by fire, who by water. God, you're this, and people were that. And so that's why he put so much, even for him, extra kavanah into emet. He also, I did get to hear him, a bunch of you got to hear him sing a pop song once. At the Gala Gourmet, he got up, does anyone remember what he sang? I just don't remember. Maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was the Beatles or the Temptations or something, but it was phenomenal. Like he got up there and we saw a side of him that we had never gotten to see. And as I mentioned, his musicianship was really perfect. He was never, not even a note really, was ever out of tune. His voice was beautiful. And I did mention his brother. This is just because I'm mentioning his family. His mother was very ill for very long, and he went down to Los Angeles constantly to take care of her. And if you didn't know that, I want you to know that about him. He was also the only caretaker for his mother, and his mother had Alzheimer's in addition to a lot of physical problems, and would yell at him and scream at him. And he was he was a devoted son. And that's part of who he was as well. One other favorite, it's not necessarily my favorite song, but I liked it fine, but it was somebody's favorite song because it was the Nigun of the Alter Rebbe, and they found it on YouTube, and they contacted him, and they put it on the TV show House MD. It was the beginning of the show. There was a wedding ceremony, and it had Richard singing this beautiful piece. So you can find it on. I think you can Google it. But and I remember he was talking about it, and they found him, and they ripped him off negotiating wise. They didn't tell him whether they're going to put it on until like the day before, and it's really kind of an ugly side of the entertainment business, which we saw. And of course, that's probably not his thing, was negotiating contracts. But it was really a moment of great pride, I think more for us, the congregation, than for him. But it was really quite cool. Second CD, Life of the Worlds. That talks about, first, there's two things. First of all, he cared tremendously about the planet and the environment. I mean, that was such a huge part of what he thought about, cared about. But also, the world music, right? He was the genre of world music, particularly Middle Eastern, Moroccan and Iraqi and Iranian, and all these Middle Eastern things. I remember one time it was in the chapel, I think it was, I don't know why we were in the chapel, it must have been the summer, or maybe it was Shabbat Shuva, or something like that. We were in the chapel, and there was this Moroccan cantor who was visiting us, and he was so excited. So he's like, ask him to do a Don Olam, ask him to do a Don Olam. And so I asked him to do a Don Olam. He used a special Moroccan tune, and he got up there, and he said, Adon Olam Hashem. It was a huge disappointment to all of us, especially to Cantor Kaplan. But he was a serious scholar of all these things. He knew all this music, and also of Hasidic music as well. He could sing in multiple languages too, and this was his big thing. Whenever he would visit a place, he would ask the cab driver where they're from. He would sing a very well-known song in their culture, in their language. And he had a great time taking taxis. That was a big thing. He also, when he did the experimental treatment in Germany that Josh Mailman set him up with, he had this, he even sang in German, he had a really visceral and disturbing but ultimately beautiful reaction to being in Germany, the land of the Holocaust. And he felt like the dead souls were talking to him, but he was singing some music in the airport, comforting this German woman. I don't remember the full story, but it was really incredible. So that is a little bit of Life of the Worlds. The final one was the Hidden One, which of course is a reference to God and searching for the Hidden One. Cantor Kaplan was sometimes hidden from us too, because he lived so much of his life in pure soul and on a different spiritual plane. It was sometimes hard to relate to him. Sometimes his music, his rhythms were ones that were hard to follow for your average person, and he would also just be in the zone that didn't exactly know what was going on. Teachings, his stories. Conservative Judaism was not always the right match for him, honestly, in serving this community, but the sincerity was never in doubt. And when he was singing, and even when he was singing in ways that we couldn't follow, it was never, ever about his ego. It was always about Hashem. It was always about God and connecting with God, even though sometimes we couldn't quite connect with him that way. But it was always about God. And really, he was a mensch. I mean, he was just a sweet, sweet man. You would think with that voice and that musicianship, there'd be a big ego, but it was never ego. It was always about God. We were a bit of Mutt and Jeff, our style. First of all, our heights, right? And that was always funny. But lots of mutual respect. There was, in addition to a contrast between our heights, there was a contrast between our paces, right? I always wanted to go faster. He never really wanted to go faster. And, he would, you would talk to him about things, but he would basically just ignore them in terms of pacing, except once. And this is why I'm telling that story because I also like to portray the full picture. But one time it was Ne'ilah, which was probably one of the highlights of any service, of any of the services that he did at Nila. He created this special feeling in Nila that was incredible. But one year, he actually realized, oh yeah, we're going to be like 40 minutes late if we go at this pace for the fast. So it was like he was on speed. But it was incredible. I mean, and I remember Stu Korn actually giving me that analogy. He said that was like the most fabulous, fascinating thing I've ever seen. It really, his kavanah at full speed was something to behold. He also, I of course, as all of us did, admired him being able to relate and be in that spiritual zone all the time. He admired me and especially my family for living in this world, the way we lived in this world. He was particularly fascinated by my sons, by Micah and Jonah. He just could not understand how these 3-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, whatever age they were, could just talk to anybody. And he was just fascinated by this. And he would ask me about, how did Micah and Jonah do that? It's really, really, really incredible. Now, unfortunately, the cancer was the most difficult and the most hidden challenge in his life. Now, I mentioned how he was a scholar. He was a scholar of music, and he became a scholar of cancer as well. And there wasn't anything that he didn't read or didn't know. It was just unbelievable, the depth of his knowledge, although he also knew about stuff that, was more than experimental, I would say. He didn't know. Actually, I'm going to mention what Francis Herb said yesterday at the funeral, but first I want to thank, first of all, the entire congregation and he was deeply appreciative of this congregation after he retired and was fighting cancer. But I'm sure I'll leave some people out, but I want to especially thank Josh Mailman, who normally is doing the streaming, but Josh is an expert on all kinds of internal cancers and set him up with doctors, experimental treatments, and kept him alive for much longer than would have been the case. Francis Herb, who is also a doctor in internal medicine and spent days and years really now with him and trying to wade through his kind of very suspicious nature of Western medicine at all. I actually remember at the beginning he was like, I think I'm not going to treat this because, they're telling me that in Israel that they don't really treat cancer at all anymore, which is completely not true, right? But, he read it somewhere on some weird experimental site. So Francis had to wade through this stuff and get him to really take some of the Western treatments too. And you are a tzaddik, and I know it was a joy to you too, but it was amazing what you did. I want to thank Harlan Simon, who is sitting right next to you. The last several weeks, he was there around the clock, just taking care of him, his body, and his soul. I want to thank Oti Gold, Heike Friedman, and Heidi Burson from the Chesed Committee, who made sure he was fed for 3 years, really, and taken to his appointments. It was more than a part-time job. They did it voluntarily, and each of them felt blessed by the sacred work of doing it. So, and those I forgot, I'm sorry, but I wanted to recognize those people for all that you did for him and all that you gave him. His music will be the Jewish soundtrack to many of our lives, right? I mean, we will never be able to read certain prayers without thinking of Richard. The last day of his life was Sukkot. It turned out that was the first day of his life too. I did not know that, but he was born on Sukkot, and he died on Sukkot. I was very fortunate that I got to visit him. I was planning on visiting him on the second day of Sukkot. I don't always observe the second day of Sukkot with the same rigor that I observed the first day of All Hagim because of the biblical relationship versus the Talmudic relationship. I wouldn't ordinarily do a visit on a Chag, but I don't know. I thought I really just want to see him, and if I get to see him again, fine. I thought he would live at least a few more weeks. He died of just a few hours after I visited him. I feel so blessed to have been there. I lead a charmed life that way. I mean, I'm lucky that happens a lot to me, actually. I decide at the last minute, I'm going to go now, even though I'm scheduled to go next week or whatever. And often, that is the end. But there's got to be meaning, right, in him being born and dying on Sukkot. Some of those early presidents born and died on July 4th, and for Cantor Kaplan, born and died on Sukkot, which is Zman Simchatenu, the season of our joy, and yet it's intermingled with the sadness of death. V'samachta b'chagecha v'ayitach sameach. Rejoice in your Chag. Let you know only happiness. You shall only know joy. And I think the ultimate joy for Cantor Kaplan is to be full-time with Hashem, to be with God. And we were just lucky enough to witness when he had a foot, not even his whole body sometimes, but a foot in this world, that we got to witness that. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Cantor Kaplan, your soul was always with God. Now it is there permanently. We are so honored and blessed to have been a part of your earthly journey. In his honor, one of his favorite musician friends, Rebbe Soul, Bruce Berger, is here. He's going to play a song. It's not one you know from Cantor Kaplan, but it is a world song. It's Cuando Ore Nimrod, which is a Sephardic Spanish song, and when Bruce would play with Cantor Kaplan, that was Cantor Kaplan's request of you, usually, that song. So, in his honor, we're going to have just a little bit of music, a little extra music.
I forgot my guitar strap, so I'm going to have to sit down. Sorry, everybody. Usually I stand for stuff like this. Let's see, I cut anyone out. So you can see me there? All right.
Do you want a mic? You need a microphone?
If you can, it'd be cool.
I can't. It'll take like a second.
All right, it'll take me a minute to do this, so that's cool. So you may wonder why I'm actually plugging in the first place. Being an acoustic instrument, if you look, it's very thin. Most acoustic guitars are a lot thicker, so they have a lot more sound. This is made for stage when you're playing with a band, and everyone drowns you out, especially like drummers and stuff. So this was actually made specially for that. This guy took apart a Giannini, which is from Brazil, and put it all back together with some electronics, so you can turn up using something like this and not be drowned out. So that's why I brought this little handy-dandy little amp over here. And I don't think it's too loud. You can hear it okay, right? All right. Oh, thank you very much. Okay. So this is in Ladino. And if there are any Spanish-speaking people here, in fact, this is California, so are there some people who speak Spanish? So you will recognize some of the words. Ladino is actually a language that's it's medieval Spanish basically, and so it's a combination of like contemporary Spanish and mostly Aramaic, which was like the major language at that time. And in Aramaic, you'll find like some little Hebrew words, and you'll recognize those. There's something like 8 verses in this classic Ladino song. I'm able to pull off one of them, and that's about it. And I learned that the hard way. The first time I ever played this, I played this music festival in Vancouver. And I think there were a bunch of Ladino speakers anyway, so I struggled through like a bunch of the verses, and afterwards this guy came backstage and told me I mispronounced like half the song, And so I figured, well, I'm just going to do the same verse and just repeat it a few times. And Richard was, there are a lot of cantors, in various synagogues and stuff. And one of the things that Richard and I really bonded with is we loved world music and we loved jazz. And so we would talk about, Coltrane all the time. And we would talk about these various songs that came from different parts of the world. And I've always maintained that, world music, like Jewish music, is probably the closest thing to world music in general anyway, because we've been all over the world. So you'll find many of our prayers, or even like things from Shir HaShirim and stuff like that, from all over the world with different melodies and things. And it's always been like a real fascination for me and also for him. And this is just this classic Ladino song. And when I talked to the rabbi yesterday, we were talking about the various songs. He suggested this one. It was kind of like this. Cuando reñirá la camposanía, miraba en el cielo y en la estrella, vi donde la santa en la ayudaría, que había de nacer. Cuando
Thank you so much, Bruce. A fitting tribute to Karen Kaplan. He also, Rebbe Sol is also connected to our congregation in other ways. He taught 7th grade for us at one time, and also lives with, you still do?
Oh, Welch, yeah.
Yeah, with Welch Warren and Kay Warren of blessed memory. He actually he's helped to take care of them for a long time too. So thank you for that as well. For those who don't know Welch and Kay, they're longtime wonderful members of our congregation. I'm going to rise now for our Musaf service. It's on page 428. We begin with the Chatzi Kaddish, and then we go to 456, because Chol Moed is that weird holiday where I explained this at the beginning, but in the morning, at the Shacharit, you treat it as Shabbat, and at Musaf, you treat it as a festival. Yikra Shemei Rabba, Yamadi Brachirute Ve'alef Malchute V'chayim, Chonu V'yom Echon, Ufchayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, Pagala, Uvizman Kariv Imeru, Yahei Shmei Rabba Mevorach, Le'olam Lod Me'almaya Yitvarach. Yiparach, Yishtabach, Yiparach, Rabbi, Naseh, Vitadar, Vitaleh, Vitalal, Shmei Kudsha, Le'elamin Kovechata, Veshirata, Tushbechata, Lenechemata, Tamiran, Be'alma, Vimeru. Adonai, Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Agita Ilatecha, Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor V'Hanara, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Akol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot, Umevi Goel Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo V'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Mashiach U'Magen, Baruch Ata Adonai, Magen Abraham, Uvokei Tzorah, Ata Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayim Eitim Ata Rab Le'Hoshia, Mechalken Chayim B'Chesed, Mechayim Eitim B'Rachamim Rabim, Tzomech Noflim B'Rovei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Hafar, Michamo Chabahal Givurot, Umido Melach, Melech Mevi, Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, Anamat Al-Chayot Meitim, Baruch Ata Adonai, Mechayeh HaMeitim. Na'aritzecha v'na'akdishecha kesotziach tzarfei kodesh amakdishim shimcha b'kodesh kakatuv al yad neviecha v'karazeh el zeh ve'amar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzvaot v'lochol ha'aretz Kevodo melei olam v'shartav shvalim zelazeh ha'yemekom Kevodo Yumatam Baruch Yomeru, Baruch Adonai Minkomo, Yifen Berachamim, Ve'achon HaMechadim Shemo, Erev HaBoker, V'chol Yom Tamid, Pa'amayim Be'ava, Shema Omrim, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Eloheinu, Avinu, Malkeinu, Mosheinu, Vehu Yashminu Rachama, Sheni Li'enei Kol Chai, Sheni Li'enei Kol Chai, Liot Lachem Elohim, Echem Udivrei Koshecha Katu Le'mor, Yimlo Hanai Le'olam, Elohayim Tzio, L'dor Vador, Hallelujah, L'dor Vador, Nagikot Lecha, Letzim Shachanati, Shachalahim Pino Yamushelam Va'ed, Kemal Karon Krosh Ata, Baruch Adonai, Ayel HaKadosh. I'm going to do one more paragraph before we go into silence on 462. אתה וחרתנו מכל העמים, אהבת אותנו ורצית בנו, מכל רוממתנו מכל הלשונות, וקידשתנו במצוותיך, וקרבתנו מלכנו לעבודתך, בשמך הגדול והקדוש עלינו קראת. אתה בחרתנו מכל העמים, מכל העמים, אהבת אותנו ורצית בנו, אהבת אותנו ורצית בנו, ורוממתנו מכל הלשונות, וקידשתנו במצוותיך, וקרבתנו מלכנו לעבודתך, וקרבתנו מלכנו לעבודתך, בשמך הגדול והקדוש עלינו קראת. אתה בחרתנו מכל העמים. Continue on around 462 through 477. Shalem now. Continuing your Amidah, please feel free to. 506. Kedal Mikra Shemerava, Gamadi Rachir Tevam Lichmachu Teva Chayachon, Gamchon Chayachon Beit Yisrael, Bagalav Izman Kariv Imeru, Yesh Me'Rava Mevorach, Leolam Le'al Me'omaya Yitbarach, Barach Vishnavat, Barnam Minasevi, the David Levi, Talashmet Kucha, Rehu, the Lami Koberkata, Shirat Tatu, Katamata, Tamirami Imeru, Kibat Sultan Voton, Khosra, Kudamagon, Vishmaya Imeru, Ejam Rab Michamai, Kiman Koisra Imeru, Hossein Shalom Imamav, Huya Se Shalom, Elena Vel Ko Israel, Yakoy Shvetevel Imeru. All right, come on out for 8 Kelohenu. Stand right here. Stand right there. One, two, three. Ein Eloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kamoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Kadonenu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Mi Kamoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Emalkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu,
Atahu Adonenu,
Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shektiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha Eketoret Hasami. Please rise for the Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon l'adon l'teku l'alosir l'eshi shelos ha'yamei ha'aratzon velos ha'yamei ha'adama shelos ha'yamei ha'hem ve'gor aleinu k'kol ha'amona v'anachnu kodim u'mishtachavim u'modim Lifnei melech malchei hamlakim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu notei shamayim ve'yosef haaretz U'Moshe v'Karo v'shamayim mima'am U'shchinat tuzo v'gopei miromim U'Eloheinu eino Malkeinu efezulato Kakatu betorato Midata ayom Behashivota El levavecha Ki Adonai Ruvan Elohim Bashamayim imaham Ve'aretz mitachat Eino Kakatu b'tor techanayim loch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar v'chaya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz v'yomahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. We may be seated as we lovingly recall the memory of our departed relatives and friends whose yortzeit to observe during the coming week. Thinking especially today of David Belzer, Celia Berman, Seymour Sy Cernitz, Eleanor Davis, Emmanuel Diamant, Rebecca Diamond, Max Fass, Benjamin David Gaynor, Toba Goldenhar, Linda Gordon, Hyde Gottner, Bernard Stewart Herodes, Edith Kaplan, Udo Kontrovich, Howard Kratchman, Nathan Levine, Joseph Novak, Abraham Binowitz, Donald Rapson, Daniela Rath, Miriam Kestenblatt Renner, Ellen Rubin, Becky Sheckman, Reba Sheckman, Rose Sevendoff, Fanny Aaron Bartseith, Roy Taylor. We're the Shloshim for Erwin Kanan and Ruth Glazer, and we're the Shiva, of course, for beloved Cantor Richard Kaplan, but also for Marilyn Golden. Marilyn is the aunt of our member Jordy Pollock, who was also quite a local force in civil rights, and she's also was married to Rabbi David Cooper, the Rabbi Emeritus of Kehillah, and Cantor Kaplan also sort of being a part of that community. The renewal lost two real giants in their midst this week, so really our thoughts are with all of them. We ask all those who are mourning or observing Yorkside, as well as anyone else who would choose to do so, to rise for the Mourner's Kaddish. It's on page 510? 512. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'elmad Yivrach Yeruteh, V'yamlich Malchuteh, V'chayechon v'yomechon, V'chayechon Beit Yisrael, B'galav V'zman Kariv V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach, V'yolam L'amei Omaya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudsha, Barichu, Le'ela Min Kol Berchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechamata, Tamiran V'yalma V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom V'imruam, V'yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru, Amen. For Nam Abraham, and remember the people you've come to say Kaddish for your blessings always. Amen. All right, a few announcements. And Dave, I don't know if you'll be doing announcements next week, but you'll definitely be giving gifts starting next week, right? So, next Saturday, Bat Mitzvah, Ruth Feldham. And we've got B'nai Mitzvah, I think, 5 out of the next 6 Saturdays, which also means Kiddush lunch. Now, I know, and I'm not sure I won't just like take a plate and then go back to my office and sit away from everybody eating, but there's a certain risk that we're taking, but we are doing it. The way I'll explain this next week too, but the procedure is going to work. We're going to do Kiddush and Motzi from the Bima. And then there will be cups and challah pieces if you want to take them downstairs. You're going to proceed down the stairs, pick up food by servers in the social hall, and then go outside to eat. So that's the system that we have. But so it's not quite going to be the same, but I'm telling you, the food's still going to be awesome, and I think a lot of us are pretty excited about it. It's been 19 months, I think, since the last Kiddush lunch. Oh my goodness. I was walking through, the social hall, and I'm starting to smell the food preparation again, and it's really something else. Okay, anyway, before next Shabbat, Saturday morning, where Ruth will become Bar Mitzvah, we have Erev Simchat Torah. First we have Shmini Atzeret services on Tuesday, 9:30, in here. Chazanit El Krieger will be with us to do the prayer for rain and real Hallel, so it'll be a good one to come to. It also includes Yizkor. Tuesday night, 6 o'clock, Erev Simchat Torah services outside with lots of kids, well, hopefully lots of kids, and dancing. Israeli dancing. Circle dances will be in lines instead of in circles. That's kind of how we're going to do it. Karen's ready, she says, to lead.
It's all under control.
And then we have Simchat Torah daytime services on Wednesday. So lots of special things coming up. Moadim l'simcha. But we have, a couple guests. So Sheldon, or Uli, or Ruth, who did you all bring with you? I mean, I know Phyllis and Jay, and then...
Okay, well, this is Ray and Phyllis Holland, and
Hank and Sippy. Okay,
and
welcome.
of course,
Well, yeah, Sheldon and Alan are there. Thank you, and thank you for being here.
my posse.
This is your boss. Support you in your reading. Beautiful. Beautiful. Tell us your name. Shira? Nice to meet you, Sharon. Have you been here once before? Okay, good. Okay. It's been a while, but thank you. Welcome back. I think I see Rebecca Wildman in the back, so welcome to you as well. Shabbat shalom, and of course to all our members. All right. Now, if you want words, you can go grab a brown siddur. You might find them out here. We're going to do Hallelujah, Avdei Adonai, 271. We're not going to do it. It's even in the J article, we still do the song that Karen Kaplan taught us, but not as well. One more quick story. When I first started, Karen and I went out to dinner in San Francisco at a vegetarian restaurant called Millennium, which is now in Rockridge. And who do we see there but Karen Kaplan and his long-term girlfriend, whose name is Wendy. And it turned out Karen grew up with Wendy in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Not just grew up. We were really friends.
They were very good friends through BBYO and other things. So my wife and his girlfriend, the East Coasters were with the West Coast rabbi and cantor. It was a lovely connection that we had. So if you want to, now the key to this one is to start low and slow. There's always the pressure to get faster right away. And Cantor Kaplan will go, he would do these amazing noises that sounded, but I will not be doing those. So. Hallelujah, 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 Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, Adir, Adirim, Adir, Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, Baruch, 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 Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, Gadol, Gedolim, Gadol, Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, Gadol, Gedolim, Gadol, Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, Hadur, Hadurim, Hadur, Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, Bati, Bati, Ki, Bati, Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, Zakai, 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 Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, Chanun, 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 Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, Tahor, Tehorim, Tahor, Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, Yashar, Yasharim, Yashar, Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, Kabir, Kabirim, Kabir, Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, Lomed, Lomdanim, Lomdan, Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, Melech, 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 Mahulel Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Adonai, hallelujah, 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 so much, so much, so much, Adonai, hallelujah, 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 Adonai, hallelujah, Ozer, 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 Adonai, hallelujah, 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 Adonai, hallelujah, Koye, Kredu, Yimodem, Adonai, hallelujah, 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 Tzadik, 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 Adonai, hallelujah, 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 Adonai, hallelujah, Kadosh, 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 Adonai, hallelujah, hallelujah, Adonai, hallelujah, Rachman, Rachmanim, Rachman, Adonai, hallelujah, 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 Shomer, Shemerim, Shomer, Adonai, hallelujah, 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 Adonai, hallelujah, Tomer, Shemerim, Shomer, Adonai, hallelujah, 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 Adonai, hallelujah, 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 Adonai, hallelujah, Yah, hallelujah, Avdei Adonai. I lost the breath at the end there, but Shabbat shalom. Moadim l'simcha.